Okay, it's 10 o'clock by my clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our mobile parts count webinar. I'm excited to have you here today and show you what we've been working on. A few quick notes before we begin. Today's webinar will be recorded, and we'll send you a link to the recording and a copy of this slide deck within about 24 hours after we get done here. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A window and I'll address them at the end as time allows. Any questions we don't get to, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly after the webinar. Lastly, your feedback really does matter to us, so please take a moment to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar so we can make sure that these are as useful as possible for you going forward. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Allison Miller. I am a sales engineer here at IDS. I've been here about 2.5 years. Prior to coming on board at IDS, I was a customer as the general manager of a 2-location RV dealership out in the Pacific Northwest, and started my career in the RV business as a controller. So most of my background's actually in accounting. And now I'm working here on the sales team, kind of helping bridge the gap between our customer, the sales team, and product. Today, what we're going to talk about is our newly launched mobile parts count. For those of you who have been customers for a while and have known our former versions of our service mobile app, you may have had the mobile parts count feature in the past. We've rebuilt that onto our latest service mobile app. And that's what we're going to walk through today. So I'll take you through the setup instructions. We'll do a live demo of the product, and then I'll just provide a quick update at the end on some upcoming events that you guys might be interested in. And we'll open it up to questions. As a reminder, just go ahead and answer your questions throughout. You don't have to wait till the end. You can add them to that questions box throughout. So first of all, just a high-level introduction to mobile parts count. This is an add-on feature to the IDS Service Mobile app. It is provided at no cost to our existing Service Mobile users. So as long as you have a Service Mobile license, then it's just a matter of turning on this particular feature, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. It uses the existing G2 Astra parts count function to measure, maintain, and control the parts inventory, right? So this is all about streamlining the parts count, getting it off of paper count sheets, and having those counts inputted right into the system from a mobile device, so you're not having to carry a laptop around or a clipboard with a sheet of paper. And really the goal here is we want to save dealers time and prevent loss. That's why we do parts counts, is the second half of that, right? To prevent loss. So we want to make it as efficient as possible. From a setup standpoint, there's really kind of 4 steps to the setup. I'll walk through each one of them, and then we'll dive right into the mobile app itself. So the first thing is you need to make sure that you're on the latest release. This is always going to be the case. You're going to hear me say this on every webinar. Make sure you're on the latest release to make sure that you have all the latest features. We do 3 major releases a year on G2 Astra, and then with Service Mobile, we'll do releases periodically. Those are going to be, you just download that from the App Store, whether it's Android or Apple. So the release you should be checking to see if you're on right now for G2 Astra is 24.9, and for Service Mobile, it's 24.10. You can request a release from the G2 welcome page for G2, and then you can download the latest Service Mobile version from your App Store. The next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we have our parts roles set up to include the parts counts features. So we're going to go into administer G2, maintain roles, and then from here, you're actually going to use this magnifying glass here to select your parts role. So if you search parts, it'll show you it'll show you every role that includes part, and you want to make sure that those roles all have both the mobile parts count inventory task checkbox checked, as well as the parts conduct a parts count. So as a reminder, I'll share this out with everyone afterwards so that you have it as a reference guide if you go to implement this at your dealership. And then the next step is to make sure that the mobile licenses have been assigned. So the licensing for Service Mobile, work on a named user basis. So you need to make sure that whatever specific users you want to be able to perform a count from their mobile device, that they have a service mobile license assigned to them. So you can get to that through the manage licenses feature under admin. And then you'll just go through your list of unassigned users and move them over to the assigned users. One thing to note here is you'll want to make sure that you have enough licenses. So the licenses are bought sometimes in packs of 5 or 10 or whatever. So you have a certain number of licenses available, and then those licenses can get assigned out to users. If you don't have any licenses available, and it'll show you on the screen, then it could be that maybe you've got some assigned users you could unassign, or maybe you just need to purchase some additional licenses, in which case you can reach out to your account manager for that, and I'll provide their contact information at the end. Next step is now that we've made sure that the roles have the specific task assigned to them, we need to make sure that your users have those roles assigned to them. And so you're going to do that through the new user wizard, and you want to make sure that your parts department is has one of those parts roles assigned to them, whichever one is most appropriate for your dealership and for their role within the dealership, and make sure that they have that role assigned to them that includes those parts count tasks. So you would just check the roles down below, and then you can see on the right-hand side a summary of what roles they have. Also, I'll note here, it's not visible on the screen, but on the user tab, one thing you can use that'll just kind of help streamline things. I'll just hop in here really quick and show you guys. I always like to include little helpful tips as I go through this. One thing you can do to make it easier to manage your user roles and permissions is to leverage user groups. So if I slide this over here, you'll see here that I have not been assigned a group, but you can actually create user groups. So you could, for example, create a parts group, and then that is going to automatically, so I've got a parts manager group, that's going to automatically update my module security levels as well as my role based on that parts group. So then when you are adding users, instead of having to copy from an existing user, you can just apply the parts group and it's going to apply it accordingly. I'm going to remove this group, or I'm going to lose all of my I'm going to lose all of my access. But user groups is a great way to help manage your users on a go-forward basis and make it just a little simpler as you're updating users and adding users to the system. So then coming back over here, the parts count feature is compatible with basic barcode scanners. It's fairly barcode scanner agnostic, so you should be able to use just about any barcode scanner you want. However, we have specifically, through the course of building out the app, tested the Scan Avenger SA9000 series. These are available on Amazon for like 60 bucks, not a huge investment. And then there's just a note there to make sure that if the scanner has a control character where it automatically adds certain characters to the data that's being transmitted, to make sure that you disable that. So with that, that's all the setup pieces. So you guys are able to really, because this is not an additional cost or additional licensing, it's just a user setup issue. As long as you have those mobile licenses available, you have the ability to go in and turn this on today and start using it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to my mobile device here and just mirror my phone to the screen. But first, we're going to start by starting a parts count. So in G2, we're going to initialize the parts count the same way we always have. So I'm going to go to parts utilities, and then I'm going to conduct a parts count. Now, the first thing that I want to do when I conduct this parts count is if there is already a parts count in progress, so you can see here there's a cycle count in progress, I either need to complete that count and submit it, or in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and reset it. Sorry, Brandon. I'm going to reset the current count. And then I'm going to go ahead and start another cycle count. Now we have two options here. We can do this we can use this for a cycle count or a year-end count. One thing I will note about the year-end count is that it will take within the mobile app, if you do a year-end count, depending on how large your file is, it will take a minute or two for those parts to load. So just be aware of that, you know, kind of maybe start the year-end count, load it into your app, and then go get a cup of coffee. But we're talking 1 to 2 minutes, not hours. And then for the cycle count, this is where I'm going to select which bins I want to count. So I'm not doing a full count of everything. I'm just maybe going to select one bin and count that bin. So I am just going to go ahead and pick a random bin, and we're gonna count that bin. From here, I've got a couple more options before I build this count file, or one more. I can specify whether I want this to be a blind count or not. So my personal recommendation is that counts always be done as a blind count. What this means is that the person doing the inventory count won't see how many parts on hand the system says we have. And it just avoids them saying, yep, 4, 3, 2, right? Like just saying whatever they're supposed to be saying, that's how many they are. And it forces them to really, truly do a count. So I'll go ahead and select blind count and build the count file. So in this case, there's 4 parts that are in that bin that have been selected. Now from here, if I wanted to just print my count sheets and do it manually, I would do that from here. But we don't want to do that. We want to do it in the mobile app. And so I'm actually going to bring over, I guess we should say, my mobile app screen, and I will minimize this. So once you have enabled the parts counts feature through the steps that I outlined earlier, then you're going to see within the Service mobile app, I now have this parts count option on my menu list of options. So I'm going to give this a quick refresh and go into my parts count, and I'm going to go ahead and reload the parts list because you remember there was a prior parts count that had been started. Now, this is automatically going to take me to the search bar so that I can search by part number or part description. If I'm using a barcode scanner, this is where I would scan the barcode of the part that I want to count. And if it's an exact match, so if I were to scan the barcode and it was part number 1144, it'll take me right into that part record, versus here you're seeing a list of the 4 parts that are here. Same thing if I manually search my part number. So if I say 1144, as soon as I hit that last digit, I've now got a full part number, and it's going to take me right into the quantity number so that I can quickly get to counting, and I don't have to click around too much. If I scroll up just a little bit, I'll be able to see, you know, who initialized this count, but also the on-hand quantity. You'll notice that it's just blank. That's because we opted to do a blind count. If I didn't check that box, it would show me what is the on-hand quantity per the system. And in this case, I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and count. I've got a couple options here. I can use the number pad to key in the quantity, or I can use the plus and minus to adjust the quantity. This is going to bring up my default bin, my main bin. And then I can select this drop down, and it'll show me what other bins are associated with this part. So in this case, this part's located in 2 different bins, 104 and 106. Quick reminder, when you're doing an inventory count, you want to make sure that you always count that part in all bins. So even though I'm only doing a cycle count of bin 106, for this part number, this leech widget, I want to make sure that I count all of that part, including what's in the overflow bin, in this case, bin 104. So that's a really important part of making sure for a cycle count that you get them accurate, is that you are counting any part that's in that bin, you're counting that part anywhere that it exists. So in this case, I'll just go ahead and say I've got 1 in bin 106. And then I've got an overflow bin. So I'm going to add another bin, and it automatically is going to pull up bin 104 because that's the other bin associated with it from parts maintenance. That's where the bins are assigned. So I'll go ahead and say there's 1 in 1 bin in bin 104 as well. And then I will save my progress. Okay. So then I will go ahead and either scan the next part number, key in the part number, or just select it from the list. And I'll add my quantities for the rest of the parts. So we'll do a couple here, and I'll add some here. Thank you. And then we'll do one more here, and I'm going to say there's actually 0 there. We'll keep that at 0. So now, and you'll see here we have a couple different sort and filter options. If this was a longer list, you know, I might want to filter it by part number, or sorry, change my sort order by part number or part description. And then I can always flip whether it's sorted in ascending or descending order. And then once I'm done counting the parts I'm going to count, and I don't have to have counted all of them, but generally we want to try and complete the full count. And that's one of the benefits of doing these small bin counts, is that you can, it can only take a few minutes, right, to do a count of a particular section. Once I've got my count done and I want to push that data back to G2 to the count file, then I'm going to press this little paper airplane button. That's my send button. So it's going to show me I've counted 4 and I've not counted 0. So I confirm that I've counted everything in my list. And then I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to go ahead and upload this to G2. Now at this point, the count hasn't been finalized. So I have pushed this data into G2, into the count file, and I'll pull that up here. So if I go to the update parts tab here and hit refresh, it brings my count numbers in. So there's my count that I just did. But I haven't finalized this count, which means within the Service Mobile app, I can still update it. I can still update it within Service Mobile if I mess something up, or I can still update, or I can update it right here. So generally, it's great to maintain two-person integrity here, where you've got one person doing the physical count and then another person reviewing it so that they can see if anything looks off. For example, if I'm the manager and I'm reviewing this before I finalize it, I see that we're supposed to have 99 of these on hand, but the count came back with 2. So now I can say, you know, hey, parts person, what's going on? Why is this count so far off? And, oh, whoops, I put in 1, but it was actually 100, right? So I can either fix that here as the manager, I can update my count just right here, or I still have access to this count because it hasn't been completed yet. I can go back in and I can adjust my quantities and say, okay, it was actually 100. And then I just need to resubmit that and push that updated data back to G2. Right? Oh, my screen froze on, on my screen mirroring. So what you didn't see was that I just updated this 2 to 101. On the, so now as I refresh over here, because I updated it on the Service Mobile side, it's updated the main count to 100 plus 1 in my overflow bin. Okay. So then the important thing here, so from a count standpoint, one thing I'll mention is we can have multiple people counting concurrently. There can just only be one active count happening at a time. So what I mean by that is I've got an open cycle count. I could have 2 different people on 2 different mobile devices counting within that bin at the same time. And then they can each push their counts into here, and it's going to all populate in here. And basically, whoever hits submit last, it's going to keep their number, right? So the latest version, it's going to override whatever is in here up until the point that we finalize this count. And then the other thing is for the year-end count, same thing, right? Because you're oftentimes going to have a bunch of people all counting all at the same time. So you can be counting concurrently on that as well. I do have one question that came in. Why can't we scan each item with the scanner / mobile phone to get the quantity instead of physically counting each one? Lucinda, let me get back to you on that one, because that might actually be a capability. I just need to confirm on the product side, and I don't like to overpromise. So I'll circle back to you on that. Okay, so a really important thing here from a process standpoint is making sure that before we go on to step 4, which step 4 is moving the count to actual, that we review this, we make any updates here, or we make them from the mobile app and push them into here. And then we run the related reports. So especially this parts variance report, this parts variance report can only be ran for this count right now. And so we want to run the parts variance report. That's going to show us exactly what it sounds like. Any parts that have a variance from what we were expecting. What bin were we counting? 106. And then we want to save a copy of this. This is just going to help you because you're not going to be able to go back and recreate this report later. This report is constantly being overridden by whatever the latest count is. So you're going to run your variance report. This is only going to show you the items. We counted 4 items, but only 2 of them actually represented a variance from what was on hand. So that's what's showing up on the report. Is this one, the count was 2 units higher, and this one, the count was 2 units lower, and what the corresponding cost variance is. So that's going to tell you what your adjusting entry is going to be once you finalize this report. This is the dollar value that your inventory is going to get adjusted by. So be sure to run your variance report, review it, but also save a copy of it. And clarification on the on running this report, it's not necessary. So I put in this specific bin, but it's not necessary to do that. You can also just leave it set to star for all, because it's still just going to pull from the latest, which is the one you're working on. I do have one more question that came in about, do I have to count the overflow bin at the same time, or can I count the overflow area later and G2 will tie the total count together? You do have to count the overflow bin at the same time. So when you're counting a part, you need to count that part in every location that it exists, even if it exists in a, I mean, it does intrinsically exist in another bin, but yes, you have to account at the same time. You can't go back and do it later, or your numbers will be off. So we've got the parts variance report, and then there's a couple other reports that you can run too, that I won't go into the detail of all of them, but you've got your not counted report year to date, not counted in this current cycle, and then your variance report, and then you can run your final report once you're done. So once you've completed your count and then done the necessary review, then you're going to go to step 4, which is going to be the begin move to actual. This is going to actually change your quantities on hand and change your inventory value, and it'll create that adjusting entry to actually change your financials. So this is something that, you know, we talked about those tasks and assigning permissions. You know, this is something that, you know, you want to make sure that people understand what it means when they push begin move to actual. They actually are creating an accounting entry if there is in fact a variance. So it's going to ask me, are you sure you verified everything? I'm going to say yes. Its parts count is completed, and that journal entry has been created. So I'm going to pull back to my slide deck here. There we go. And just wrap it up with a couple final thoughts and recommendations. So number 1 is remember your ABCs. In this case, always be counting. I'm a strong proponent of building cycle counts into your daily procedures, especially high value items, things that are easy to walk away with, small, high value, whatever the case may be. It can take a lot of time and be really overwhelming to do counts. And it's essential to do a year-end count to make sure that your financials are accurate. But if you're only doing a year-end count, there's no way to know what's happening to your inventory throughout the year. And if it's either you know, if it's kind of walking out the back door or whatever may be happening. So the more frequently you're counting, the more quickly you're going to be able to react if something's off. And having it just be, you know, a lot of time parts people, they have time between customers when they're standing at the counter. So that's why I say build it into your daily procedures. That's what we did at the dealership, and we would just actually color coded our parts department, mapped it out, color coded it, and then just assigned each parts person a section, like you're the yellow section. And then it was their responsibility and expectation that by the end of the week, they would have completed, they would have done a cycle count on everything in that area. One thing I'll mention really quickly from an accountability standpoint is, okay, so I tell them they have to count every day, but how do I know if they're actually counting? There is one more report within the parts, which is, let me see if I can remember what it's called. There is a count report. Here we go, part cycle count history report. So this is just going to run, it actually runs it for all time. And I'll pull up this report really quick. And so this is just going to show from the beginning of the time on, at the very bottom is going to be the most recent. So you can actually check as a manager, you can run this report once a week or whatever frequency and confirm that people are actually running counts. So this is only going to show completed cycle counts. So it's a great way. It's, you know, could be just a weekly or a monthly check-in to look and see, are the cycle counts getting completed and who's doing them. So there is a question around phone compatibilities with cycle counts and some phones being incompatible in the past. I don't know specifically from a device standpoint. What I do know is that the service, this is part of IDS Service Mobile app, which is compatible with both Apple and Android devices. Now, where we sometimes run into issues from a technology standpoint is if the devices are really, really old, or if you're on an old version of the app. And so then you get into a situation where sometimes there becomes technology incompatibilities, and that's going to be the case no matter what, generally no matter what platform you're on. So I will say it is, if you're already using a device with Service Mobile, the parts count feature is absolutely going to work. And it would definitely be by exception that it wouldn't work. And it would only be if it was an old enough device that it was just no longer supported and you couldn't get on the latest releases of the software. Last couple of things is touching on that. Make sure you stay up to date and get the latest features. This includes G2 Astra releases as well as Service Mobile. The updates include features. They also include security updates, bug fixes, right? So you always want to make sure you're on the latest and greatest. And then lastly, limit the ability to create bins. So when I started out as a controller, I had come in right at year end, and we had a year end count that was off by a lot. And so I jumped in and assisted with the recount. And one of the things I found was that our list of bins was enormous and included things like, I kid you not, the bin location name was under David's desk. And so we went through the process of actually deleting all the extra bins, creating all new bins, deleting all the old bins. And then the next step was limit it so that only the parts manager could actually create new bin locations. Because once we knew everything was mapped out and we had bin locations for everything, there was no reason for anyone to need to create new bins. So that's something that I consider you look at. That's just going to be within your user settings. If you look at your subroutine security levels, check your subroutine security levels and make sure that the ability to create new bin locations is ranked pretty high. My recommendation being so that just your service or your parts manager or service manager can create new bins. If you want more information, so this isn't something that you necessarily have to reach out to your account managers to purchase, like I said at the beginning. However, if you are needing additional mobile licenses or if you have specific questions around compatibility, feel free to reach out to Wiley for the Eastern US and Texas and Kevin for the Western US and Canada. And then another resource is going to be the IDS customer portal. That's where you're going to be able to find a user guide. The user guide is going to include how to set up the Parts Mobile app, just like what we went through today. It'll include all of that as well as just how to use it on a daily basis. And then, of course, you can always reach out to, as you're setting things up or as you're using the system, you can always reach out to support via phone, text, or phone chat or email, and they can help you navigate those things as they come up. Lastly, we've got a few upcoming events, and Kevin Gribble, who you saw on the last screen, is going to be doing a webinar about warranty and viewing warranty as a profit center later this week. And then we'll have another Dealership Insights forum specific around inventory management. This would be unit inventory management. At the end of the month, I'll be doing another webinar. And really what we're looking to do here is kind of showcase some of our newer products, a collection of our newer products, and give you a sneak peek of what we'll be showcasing throughout the shows over the winter. We'll be at Route 66, RVDA, RV Care, and MRAA before the end of the year. There are a couple questions that are very specific to the dealership, so I'm gonna follow up with you guys afterwards. But we will get answers to you shortly after this webinar. And then one question that's more general is, does the mobile app work with year-end counts? And the answer is yes, it does. You would initiate it the same as how we initiated this cycle count. Just the one little caveat is you'll need to give it in, once you pull up your app and you open it, it'll take about 60 seconds to 2 minutes for that list to load, depending on the size of your file, because it's a lot of data to load. But then once it loads, then you would go through and you would count just the same as we did for the cycle count, and you can have concurrent users all counting at the same time. And we will absolutely email out a link to the webinar recording, the slide deck, as well as the user guide. So everyone who attended today will get that, and then we will. And then we'll respond to any questions I didn't get to. We'll respond to those by the end of the day. Thanks everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. And I will see you next time.